then I'll get us rolling.
Yep.
All right. Welcome everyone to the August 2019 conference call with growers. I'm Zach. Jim will be on this one as well as a few other guys. We'll be starting with a guy named Vince from Illinois. Then moving on to Ron Mulford from Maryland, who's done some test plots with growers and other programs as well. Then we'll be hearing from Ian Archibald from up here in Ontario, talking about his sprayer business. And then John Sensenig from New York State, who will be talking about his son's farming operation and stuff he's seen in New York. Jim will start us off. Remember, if you have any questions, it's *6 to unmute yourself. And Carla will probably take care of any background noise that we end up hearing. All right, Jim, want to go?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Zach. You guys that are going to be speaking, Carla's got your numbers, and hopefully she'll get you unmuted so you don't have to worry about that. But everybody else on the call, if you want to interject a question at a time when we ask for questions, you're going to have to hit *6 to get on. And we just ask that everybody tries to keep it as quiet as possible, keep the noise down so that we can hear the guys without a lot of background interference. My name's Jim Halbeisen, and I'm going to be in charge of the Growers Chemical Corporation conference call this evening. And usually I start off and talk a little bit about what we're having in agriculture as far as current events and that type of thing. And I will eventually get to that, but I've got a young guy tonight that is a good grower's customer. His dad's been around us for a while, and he's farming with his dad now, and then he's got his own businesses also. And he does a lot in the marketing arena too with the other businesses that he has. And I've asked him to come on and talk a little bit about the WASAID report that's going to come out on Monday. Right now, that seems to be what everybody's waiting on. We had a little bit of push in the market today, but I think the big unknown is, what the yields are going to be. They're going to talk about acres initially, but really it's going to come down to how much production there really is. And that's totally out there in left field, and the way the government is approaching it, it's quite questionable. And I know a lot of you guys that are interested, it isn't all in just marketing your grain. Guys are trying to buy feed too, so we try to help on that side of the equation as well. So I think I've had a lot of discussion with Vince in the past, and I think he's a good grower's guy and being conservative and tries to look at all aspects. So that's why I've kind of asked him to just come on and talk a little bit. If you look at a map of Illinois, I-70 that is maybe a little south of center or whatever, Vince is just a little bit north of that. There's a Highway 16 that kind of parallels 70, and that's really the division between the prairie soil and the timber soil in Illinois. And Vince farms both sides of that and has a perspective on both of those, so he knows how some real nice soil works, and then he knows how some not so real nice soil works also. So he's got a good perspective that way, which I think helps with his conservative approach to agriculture. So this is Vince Reinecke. Vince has been on before with his dad, Steve. I had him on a few years ago trying to talk about how a father and son work together. Dad's got things started, and son comes along, he's got some different ideas, and they kind of got to mesh that together, and they did a real nice job for me. So I'm just going to let Vince take this thing and run with it, and then when he's done, I'm going to probably have some questions for him that hopefully will get a little more light on the whole situation. So Vince, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your operation, and then kind of focus on that report next Monday and what it means and what you see at this point.
Sure. Thanks, Jim, for having me. And Thanks for asking once again that I join, and thanks for the opportunity to share some knowledge. Hopefully it ends up being that. And as we all know, marketing information can quickly be junk or gold. So the market has a way of telling us after the fact whether it was good or not. But I appreciate, you mentioned that your focus was on the yield. And so let's go there here quick. Not maybe so much to talk about yield in the report that we expect, or what we might expect out of the report Monday, but in particular, let's recognize, and for anybody that's listening that has more questions about this, Todd Gleason, WILL Radio here in Illinois, is with the University of Illinois. So today, yesterday, I don't remember exactly when it was, but he just interviewed one of the folks from the USDA that is kind of in charge of some of this reporting for the crop side of things. And so great, I would highly suggest you Google it and listen to it. It was about a 10-minute long interview, I think it was, but a lot of good technical stuff there. I'm just going to suggest to you that you go listen to it to make sure that I didn't miss something. But one of the things regarding yield that was a recent change, I want to say 3 months ago, I believe it is, that was highlighted in this interview. It was actually slated that we were not going to bring any actual information into this August report regarding yield. So normally in the past, we've had ear counts or ear weights or something that has helped us establish what the yield is for the August crop report. That is not just because it's 2019, even though this has been such an odd year, but because, give or take 3 months ago, they decided that was going to be procedural, that we were not going to use that information in the August report going forward. So, I could easily see this being forgotten by the grand market participants, and I think that's something important to recognize, is that we actually won't have any yield information, no yield estimates, nothing that pertains to this year's crop in this August report like we have had in the past. So that could be another misleading, point or point of contention for what this August report looks like. I think, we have to be careful of that and just simply remember that there's an actual procedural change as it goes in this, this August report compared to years past. So that all said, let's think about where we're at market-wise, as well as, what that report might tell us. We all know that the market has been pretty hard on us here in the recent past. Corn, soybeans, wheat, everything seems to have kind of hit the skids, and we found ourselves on our chin. It does appear that in corn, for example, soybeans also, that we did catch at some of those resistance levels that have now, of course, turned into support levels after we rallied through them. So that area down around the $4 area on December corn, that seemed to catch. That's a good thing. We've seen it rally back, and as we look at the resistance now, we should be looking at resistance in December corn somewhere around 420, 425. Those are the things that, those are the levels that it appears like it's going to be pretty tough to rally through at this point without new information. Will we see new information in this August report? There is a great deal of speculation that we will, acres or harvested percentage. There's so many ways we can skin this cat in regards to, we could change the acres, the total acres, or we could change simply the number of acres that we harvest or the percent that we harvest of the total acres, or we could change yield. And that doesn't even talk about the demand side, the usage side of the balance sheet. So there's a number of things that really can be drawn into question here. And I think it's most clear to say that we just don't know how they're going to handle it this go round. So I sure don't expect any earth-shattering information to come out of Monday's report. It feels to me like, Jimmy highlighted that today was a nice bounce. It feels like the general lean from producers that I've talked to, other market participants, is that, we should get some good information out of this August report. and I'm afraid that we're a little bit, on our toes, waiting for whatever might be coming at us, and then we get what comes and feel a little disappointed by what we were hoping but didn't ever see. Hoping for but didn't ever see. So again, I feel like the market's leaning, waiting. Market participants in particular are leaning and waiting and hoping for good information, but I am still at this point a little hesitant to say that we're going to get a lot of good information out of this August report. Does that mean the market's going to go up? It doesn't mean it's going to go down. Truth be told, I'd be surprised if we move too far from the range we're currently in. Obviously, if we rally too much going into that report, we do have some downside risk back to the bottom of the range, or D's Corn's got a gap at, I think it's 377 to 380 that we left as we started rallying. It's pretty hard for me to fathom that we need to fill that gap at this point, considering the situation as we walk out the door or drive across the state or drive across the Midwest. It's pretty challenging to think that we're in need of a lower corn price. And again, especially as you go east, I know. So I believe that we are in a situation, however, that we just don't have enough new bullish news to drive the market significantly higher just yet. Now, this weather situation could be that bullish news we need. Just feels like we're going to have to get through the report before, and perhaps a couple weeks down the road before that really turns into information that the market gets focused on again. Soybeans are another somewhat similar situation to corn there. We've rallied beans back now up to, just under the 890. I'm talking about November beans again here. Mm-hmm. But so the 890 area seems to have stopped us on the top side. That really is the resistance, support, now it's resistance. That it really is critical here. If we find some information come out of this Monday report, or we see some, technical buying going into the report, whatever it is that could cause us to move above 890, I think that's the first barrier that is a pretty challenging barrier to get through on November beans. We've got support, and pretty good support for that matter, down at the 860 area on November beans. Any given number of things could push us back to that rough area. Do we go below 860? Of course, there's always a chance we could, but, really I think that fundamentally speaking and from a supply perspective, we've really got risk in these soybeans. And, I look out my back door, and Jim, as we talked earlier, I drive from here to Champaign in areas that traditionally have fantastic looking crops, and you just don't see the crops that we're used to, and specifically you don't see the soybean fields, that the kind of dark green cast that we're normally used to looking at, as well as no indications of where rows are at. It's just one solid mass of soybeans, and that's not what we have to deal with this year. We all know beans have 9 lives, therefore, they can pull a rabbit out of a hat better than any magician I've ever seen. But I think we have to recognize that the carry in, last year's carry out, or let's call it carry in for this year, is just so large that it's just a really big weight we're dragging there. So, yeah. And the market's pretty well expressed to us that we're going to have a crop in 2019, just a matter of how it all shakes out. There again, I think we got to keep focused on the fact that, these times tend to be less risky in terms of what market participants think about the crop and the crop that's coming. I guess I should highlight, too, a good conversation I had today with an elevator manager that I know well. It sounds like to me that we continue to see cash grain moving more than anything because it's time to move it out of the bin so we can put the new one in. And that's probably not going to bode well for a rally, knowing that there's plenty of cash grain moving. Mm-hmm. So I think those are things that will give you indications as to what you do with the crop. Obviously, good basis levels, you need to be selling those things, and that's when you set delivery, is when you see good basis levels. And then, of course, your futures price rallies again back up towards that 425 area right now is the resistance on D's corn, and the 890 area as we're currently sitting ends up being resistance on November beans for now. So those are the areas at present we're looking at. We probably need to be selling if we have a bunch to sell.
I got something else I'd like you to
Sure.
talk a little bit about, Vince. Since you're a younger farmer, what's your take on the tariff thing with Trump? And I'm reading a lot of things on these websites, that were, we built that business up, and now it's evaporating, and that's going to be a big problem for agriculture. What's your take on that whole thing?
So I think it's mission critical that we start with a story that comes from China, and it came from a friend of mine, a guy that I went to college with. It was around the 2011-2012 time that he went to China on a trip and visited some of the folks in some of the areas where you're talking to bean buyers, and some of the demand is really stimulated. And one of the things that I found most notable that he come back and told me was that some of the bean buyers, some of the folks in charge of where soybean demand in China originates and kind of what it looks like, we're still remembering what happened in the 80s when, in fact, they used Jimmy Carter's name to talk about embargoes and, the things that, while I have studied them, I didn't have to live through them. So, unfortunately, I think it is, again, mission critical that we remember, especially for those of us that maybe haven't even taken time to study what happened at that time, let alone live through it. I think it's mission critical to understand that their memory lasts a long time because they are such good traders, I guess I would offer. So as we talk about the damage that we've done to the market that is in China, whether it be the president himself and tariffs, or we talk about the significant problem with Asia, the African swine fever, we are looking at a far different market in China for our soybeans, for our products, than what we were 5 years ago. And that is something that we all just simply have to accept. Whatever it takes to get that through our head, I think we have to accept that. And I say that not trying to force anyone to get to that point, but simply trying to strongly encourage someone to go and find an answer as to why I might so boldly say we have to understand that. And so, again, whether it be political issues, and we talk about all of the intellectual theft that has gone on, and some of those things that are really out of our control here in agriculture, or we talk about tariffs on goods that are imported, or them not buying our products. That can certainly be the case, but we have also seen that it really is just coming to light, even though some of us have discussed in detail the implications of this, their hog herd being cut so severely. Really the market seems to just be waking up to some of those facts. And I think we have to be awfully careful of the demand that has been destroyed and won't likely return terribly quickly. The president's a good businessman. I know two ways about that. And generally speaking, I support the approach that he has taken, because there are so many things that have been problematic regarding our relationship with China. However, again, as a production agriculturalist, it's very tough for me to say, hey, yay, we get more problems. So again, I simply go back to history does show us, especially as we think about the 30-year cycles that that most commodities, agriculture commodities, seem to cycle through. Of course, the last time we talked about some of those 30-year cycles bottoming was in the 80s, when some of these other things were going on too. So obviously not everything lined up, but it's I believe it was Mark Twain, right, Jim, that said, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes a lot.
I have one other question, Vince, I'd like you to address for a lot of the guys, well, I'm sure a fair number of guys out there, and I don't know how comfortable you are with it. Just you express how comfortable you are. Where, with your interaction with, other people in these various markets, where's this dairy thing at, in your opinion, from the guys that you're talking to?
It's yeah, I don't focus on dairy, but I do have a number of customers that are or were or are affiliated with the dairy industry. In fact, my wife grew up on a dairy farm. My father-in-law, I believe it was almost 10 years ago now, 7 to 10 years ago, that he retired from dairying. And so, while I'm certainly not an expert, I do have an opinion, and it's generally well-rounded. It is a tough scenario. The whole dairy situation is super tough. There's some great things that were added in this last farm bill. Protections, tools, risk management, benefits, all of those things. And I can't, emphasize enough the need to go and understand all that stuff to the extent to which you can, because there are some really good tools, including some new crop insurance tools that the folks, my colleagues at Strategic Farm Marketing, have begun to take to the farm, to the dairy country. That's not part of my focus, but certainly we as a team have, focused on that. And it concerns me significantly when you look at the numbers of dairy farms we've lost. However, and I say this very gingerly because I know it is painful and it is a painful situation. The thing that seems to continue to be happening, though, and we need to recognize this, in my opinion, is that it's not like we've seen cow numbers go down significantly. It's just dairy farms that have gone away. So we've reduced the number of farms and simply consolidated, the number of cows. Generally, that tells me that we're not really solving the oversupply problems that we have. So until we can raise demand, build demand, we're likely to see these problems continue. Obviously our domestic economy is doing well, and presumably, the cheese and the milk and all of the things that go along with, all the individual pieces of the dairy industry and dairy market, I presume we're going to see those look fairly good here, but I also know that our export market has been pretty mission critical in the dairy industry as well. So I think you got to just be awfully careful as to how you continue forward if you're a dairy producer.
Okay, sir. I appreciate it, Vince. Excellent job. That gives our guys something to think about, and I think you challenged them, and that's exactly what we wanted to do. So I really appreciate it.
Yep, you betcha. I appreciate it as well, Jim, and so thank you for having me.
You take care of yourself.
Yep.
Ronnie Mulford, are you out there, Ron?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we sure can. Carla's got you all locked in here. So the last month picture came from, there were actually two pictures, one of Victor Tegens and then a soybean plant that came from one of Ronnie's fields, and we were going to have him chat a little bit about it in July, and we had kind of a screw up getting him through onto the call, so I definitely wanted him to chat a little bit about that and some of the things he's been doing, looking at the growers program. We've tried to educate him, particularly on the calcium here. He had a little resistance to that for a while, but we eventually wore him down. So, Ron, if you want to get on and kind of give your pedigree and then just kind of chat a little bit about, the things you're doing now, and then if you can talk a little bit about that plant that's on the calendar, that would work real well for us.
Okay. Yes, I'm Ron Mulford. I'm retired from the University of Maryland. I managed one of our research farms on the lower eastern shore of Maryland for over 40 years and retired in 2009 and have continued to work on my own. I'm working at a farm on the lower eastern shore of Maryland and another farm in central Maryland. And that's given me a good cross-section of what farmers want and an area, particularly in central Maryland, I always wanted to work in, but with my job responsibilities while I was with the university, I couldn't do that. But, I guess it was back in 2009, 2008, our district manager here, Dennis Groves, and one of his men under him, Paige Pilchard, had approached me about the growers program. And when I heard about putting all the lime on, of course, it turned me off because I'd never heard of anything like that in classes. But when I retired, I took a different whole approach to what I wanted to look at. One of the things was in-row fertilizer, and I told Paige and Dennis that I would work with them on the growers program since I was going with in-row fertilizers and foliar feeding. And I did what they told me. We put 8 tons of lime on, put 4 in the fall and 4 in the spring, and that first year we did see some early dry down in corn. But since that time, I've looked at the program. It was working, but I've looked at it a whole lot closer, and particularly this relationship of calcium to magnesium to potash in our soil types. And it's quite interesting what I'm seeing at the farm on the lower eastern shore, and particularly and also on the central Maryland soil. Both these farms were managed well, one at a high level and one on the lower eastern shore was managed at a lower level. But what I'm seeing is, particularly the one on the lower eastern shore, the owner did have the calcium, the magnesium, the potash is pretty much in line to what I would say is a reasonable growers program. Our calcium base saturation is around 85%. Magnesium is 9 to 10, and potash is down to about 2 or 3. And what I have learned since 2009, and looking at across Maryland and talking with Maryland growers, we have a big deficiency in Maryland in potash. And I think that's hurt us as far as yields, particularly in soybeans, and going to higher yield in corn overall as far as the farmer's average. What I've done is, in talking with you, Jim, quite a bit on potash, but I pretty much have, I'll go with 100 to 150 pounds pre-plant using 0060. I won't go over that because we've talked a lot about it, the biological so forth in the soil. So we have a good relationship in our soils. And I've talked with other people that say if we get over 150 pounds of potash coming from 0060, we're going to damage that. Jim, you know more better than I do. What I want to say is, with that soil,
the imbalance, the biological, Ronnie.
There we go. And But it seems like, particularly this year, the more I learn about the growers program and foliar feeding, is that 100 to 150 pounds seems to be sufficient, and then we're coming in with a foliar feeding. I'm trying to make it so growers will use it, the foliar feeding, and this year I'm up to about 32,000 plants per acre, a little more than that, so I'll end up with 32,000. I'm using 4 and 5 gallons of the growers solution, the 10-20-10 in row.
Right.
I have no problem. I like that material. It flows nice through the planter. And I am doing, with assistance with Dennis Grove, 3 foliar feedings on corn. And I'm doing the same thing on soybeans. I'll get on soybeans in a minute. So we're picking our first growth stage on corn. I don't have a high voice sprayer, so I can't come in as late as I want to. But my first application is at about the V4, V5 stage, using about two quarts of the growers. And then when about 2 weeks later or so, when the corn gets up about knee high, I'll put another 2 quarts on, and then the rows close pretty good. And the last time I can get over the corn with my tractor, it's about belt high, 3.5 feet. And this year, compared to the check plots, if we all could see them, the corn really looks good. So I think we have this program. I'm not so going to say we have it down. There's always room for improvement. I'm first to say that because we're trying to consistently grow 300 bushel corn, and so far the growers program is as good as anything else out there that I'm trying. I have about 9 different programs going on right now in my research program, and certainly what I'm comparing the growers program is to one of our what our soil test tells us to do in using inorganic fertilizer. So it's encouraging from that point. I see the same thing but happening up at our Central Maryland location. I don't have a tractor up there that I can get over the corn very high. I make 2 applications of foliar fertilizer on the growers, but I am running in row about 5 gallon we used this year. Well, it was 5 gallon, in addition to the 100 pounds of 0060. And then we are fertilizing with nitrogen. We'll put down. So I have a total of 280 pounds of N. As far as trying to stabilize our nitrogen, I am using ammonium sulfate with it. That seems to do a good job. And corn looks good up there as well. I think I'll quit, Jim, on the corn unless you have a specific question.
Go ahead and head to beans, Ron.
And I'll go off on the soybeans. I guess the soybeans are more of a challenge to me right now because we're trying to get up consistently between 80 and 100 bushel. Have been as high as 93. That happened 3 years ago. Last year we were in the 80s, averaged in the 80s. That's across all of our programs, including the growers. And that particular soybean plant that you're talking about is one that Dennis, our district rep, he worked with a grower. Man had some poultry manure down as a base fertilizer and then used growers, and and well, I don't know, can't remember how many pods is on that plant, but if we could get a whole field like that, we'd certainly have our 100 bushel soybeans plus. But it seems like, to me, in our soils here, if we could get down 1 to 2 tons of poultry manure, if we have the poultry manure, and then follow up with a growers program on soybeans, maybe put 1 or 2 gallons in row. We've never seen any problem with that. And then we are doing 3 foliar feedings. One about the 5th node stage, 4th node stage, and then we come in at R1 and R3. R1 being blossoms are just starting, and then R3 we got some early pods. The pods are about no more than 3/4 of an inch long. And that seems to work well. Again, I'm restricted as far as how high I can go over my soybeans. My grower plots right now are between my waist and my armpits. So we got the height. I was looking at those soybeans today. We've got the blossoms out there, the blossom set. We got about, probably anywhere from 4 to 7 blossoms at a node. One thing that we have learned is to increase our yields, we're trying to get our nodes closer together. And a gentleman up in central Maryland that's been successful in growing 100 bushel beans. He seems to have the program down on how to get his nodes so they're closer together. I'm planning at 175,000. Some people have grown 90 bushel beans up in central Maryland last couple of years just with 140,000. So I don't know with this population thing. That depends on maturity group. He had a group 3.8 bean. I'm using 4.6. I don't think we have that down, but goodness, I see some farmers going back to 30-inch rows. This gentleman 2 years ago that grew 93 bushels, 140,000 and 30-inch rows with a group 3-4 bean. One thing I do see is that farmers are paying attention. The ones that I'm working with are paying attention more to this calcium to magnesium to potash ratio. I guess if anything I've learned from the grower program is how important this calcium to magnesium to potash is. I don't have any of my locations up to 90%. We're going for 85%. Jim, if you have any comment on that, I know some of them are up to 90%, but
yeah, that's some guys. When they put it on and have been at it a long time, some of them will sneak up into that area. I don't think it's anything that is a magical number. Just trying to keep that ratio, keep the spread between the calcium and the magnesium, and then I think the volume of the potash or the potassium is, you're in that 2 to 3%. I think you've got plenty of potassium to work with as long as you got that calcium magnesium spread in there.
Yeah, I like what attended your annual meetings and the importance of the calcium as far as what it'll do as far as flocculation of the soil. And if we get this magnesium too high, then run the chance of ruining the structure that we've gained
Sure.
with the calcium.
Exactly.
And this balance has done more for us than getting these consistently higher yields. And then
I agree.
I don't think we need a whole lot of foliar applications where I think we turned farmers off. I know when I was going after the 100 bushel wheat, we were spraying 4 times foliar and or going over the field, and
right.
it kind of turned the farmers off.
Yeah. No, they wanna, you know, the time factor, and again, that's a critical issue. So, hey, Ron, I'm going to go ahead and move on. I really appreciate it. You give the guys a lot of perspective on the different things. And the thing I think a lot of guys got to keep in mind is Ron's working with some fairly sandy soil compared to what a lot of us are working with. So you've got to keep that in mind when you start looking at this potassium application, because there you don't have near the silicate minerals in there that release the potassium in the eastern soils where Ron's at that you do here in the Midwest. So that can be an issue that you've got to deal with. So I really appreciate it, Ron.
Well, enjoyed it as always. Time goes by fast.
Yeah, sure does. Appreciate it. Ian, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear
Very
me?
good. This is Ian Archibald. Stanley Sensenig's picture is what's on the August calendar, and Stanley ran into a couple problems. And if you look at the calendar picture, that's a spray coop, and I don't know, Ian's got a spray coop himself, and actually he's going to be chatting next year. We're going to have one of his pictures in the new calendar coming out for 2020. So again, I thought it would be worthwhile to get Ian in here and talk a little bit about what he's doing with his sprayer and how he's got it set up and what he does in the different various crops, and see if you guys can get some perspective out of that. So Ian, I'll let you go wherever you think you want to go.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I first of all, I farm in Ontario, so that's north of most everybody on the phone. And I have a 4640 spray coop, 80-foot boom, and a 400-gallon tank. And I have triplets on the nozzle. So one nozzle is a streamer nozzle, and I put the 28% on the wheat, and I can put up to 20 gallons per acre plus on that with streaming that on. The other nozzle is a 10 to 15 gallon per acre fan jet, and I put the herbicide on with that. And the third nozzle is a cone jet. It's a TXVS4, and I use that strictly for growers. And I spray growers direct. I don't use water. If I do add a bit of water, it's rainwater I catch off the barn roof. But normally I spray it direct at about 2.5 gallons to the acre. And I use that low rate, so you get more acres per tank full, and therefore you get more done per tank load and more done in an evening. So like 2.5 gallons per acre on my 400-gallon tank does me 160 acres, or 2 gallons would do 200 acres. So I travel around 10 miles an hour when I'm spraying great straight growers, and I can do roughly just a tad under 100 acres an hour. So that's you move right along.
What kind of pressure are you carrying, Ian?
When that's only at about 38 to 40 psi.
Okay.
And my screens, the in-boom screens are 180 mesh, and there's an 80 mesh at the bottom of the tank, and there's a 50 mesh on the intake when I fill the sprayer. So that's a fairly coarse one on the intake, and then at the bottom of the tank there's an 80 mesh, and then each one of the booms has 180 mesh on them. So I can, but none of the nozzles have a screen on them. And that's my soybeans currently are at about 3 feet high. I sprayed once when they were 1.5 gallons per acre, just when they were nicely up, and I'm in 7-inch rows, by the way. I tried 15 and 30-inch rows, and in our area, this seems to work the best. And when they were nicely filling the row, went in with 1.5 gallons, and then 2 weeks later, the first flowers were showing, and I did 2 gallons per acre, and then just last week I did 2.5 to finish out the spray. So total, and they're planted with 2 gallons in the row, so it's a total of 8 gallons per acre on the beans. And we get anywhere from 50 to 60 bushels to the acre on the beans. And then I grow wheat, and the wheat goes down with 2 gallons in the row, and then in the spring, after the warm up, I come on with 2 gallons to the acre with growers, and then 2.5 gallons on flag leaf. In between those 2 sprays, I'll do use the streamer nozzles and some fructose with the 28% and put on about 20 gallons or 25 gallons roughly of 28%. And I've used my total acreage, I roughly, between what I do and spray for other guys with the growers program, I farm just under 500 acres, 450, somewhere in there. Is there anything else?
Ian, are you on your soybeans? You're in 7-inch rows now. Are you planting that with a grain drill?
Yeah. Yeah, I have
then
a colder.
do you have an apparatus on the drill to put growers in the row?
Yeah, with Keaton seed firmers.
Okay,
and
I gotcha.
Yeah, put down 2 gallons on the row.
Okay. Do you use any water with that, Ian, or do you just put straight material?
I use rainwater with that because I can't make my my pump go lower than 4 gallons or 3.5 or so.
You're about half and half, or a little 40-60 or something like that.
Yeah, and I plant about 165,000 plants per acre.
What do you like about the spray coop, and what don't you like about the spray coop?
It's got a nice. It's really. It can move around very quickly. It's quite diversified. You can see clearly. I have fence row nozzles too that I can turn on when I'm spraying herbicide just to keep the fence rows back.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't like about it, I had this happen one time. I sat it up on its rear end like a dog. I was up on the hill and I shouldn't have been where I was, and I should have backed up the hill instead of driving up, but it didn't roll over backwards, but it just sat there and we pulled it down and went away. So that's one thing I got to watch. But because we do have some pretty steep hills, but
that's true.
But other than that, it's beautiful. I really like it. You can see clearly. When you spray at night, there's enough lights on there. You got to know where your ends are and stay out of the fences.
What is your nozzle width on your boom?
20 inches.
20 inches. Now, when you use that 40 or 38 pounds, are you getting a good pattern out of that, in your opinion?
Yes, very good.
Okay.
In fact, that's with the growers and the TXVS4s. And when you're going along, I should take a movie of it, but when you're going along, the mist eddies up behind the boom, and just settles down nicely on the field. And when you come to the end of the field and turn around, you can see where you've been because the mist is just hanging there and just slowly going down.
Sure.
I got a real even cover. I'm really pleased with that.
Very good, very good. Hey, Ian, I really appreciate it. Fine job.
Thanks.
John Sensenig, are you there? Do you see him there, Carla?
You hear me, Jim?
Yeah, there you are. Okay. You got him, Carla? Yep. Okay, John. Hey, if you'd just come on and chat a little bit about your guys' operation and what Stanley's up to and what you see there in New York and what the needs are for calcium, and you just had a farm show, and you can chat a little bit about that if you want.
Well, I think we'll chat a little more about that. As far as Stanley's operation, I don't pay a lot of attention. As far as his sprayer, I don't know much about that. I don't drive it. I don't use it. So let him talk about that in another day sometime, I think. So, but
okay, that's fine.
Weather's been pretty good here now. We had pretty wet, and it dried off a little bit. And now it's raining off and on, but crops are coming. They were pretty slow, but they're starting to shape up, and guys are making third cut in hay right now, so things are looking a little bit better than what they did 6 weeks ago. So, But like you say, as far as the farm show, we just had that the last 3 days, and a pretty light crowd again. It just seems the farm show's sort of getting weaker all the time, but you get some good leads and you see your old customers. That's one good thing about it. But I'm going to fill in a little bit. I had a good one today. John Crane stopped today. You know John Crane, don't you?
Yep, sure do.
That sweet cherry orchard that he talked about, there he has quite a few acres of sweet cherries there. Probably, I don't know how many acres he's got, but it's quite a big orchard there. But the far end where he talked about where the trees were sort of giving out on him, and what was that, 4 or 5 years ago, he put 15 ton of high cal lime on there between the trees there, and trees sort of shaped up and they come back alive again, and he thought he was going to have to dig them out, but he didn't have to, and they're producing real well. Well, this year he said they have a other problem up there. All the orchards got it, and the cherries, they had a yellow leaf spot. And the interesting part was that you'll see a limb come out, the leaves all fall off, the cherries hang there, and they don't look very sort of yellow, but when he got back to where all that, the back end where he put all that lime on there, those trees were perfectly healthy. So he
excellent.
So he had to tell me that story today, and the agronomist stopped out and he told him what it is, but they still haven't figured out what the cause is or how to fix it.
Right.
I said, did you tell him about the tree that came out back, about the trees out back? No, he said, I didn't say nothing. I said, well, next time when he comes, you call me and I'll tell him.
Yeah, there you go.
So then he also talked a little bit about, we were up there 3 years ago or 4 years ago. We looked at his soybeans there, and he had them yellow spots, and we talked about sulfur. And then he had some of that this year again. Noticed the one big bean field there is adjoining right up against his sweet cherry orchard there, and they do a lot of spraying on them, and they have a lot of sulfur in there. And he said it was interesting. He said there's quite a few 100 feet into the bean fields that were along the orchard where the plants are perfectly healthy, and down in the field others where the yellow leaves are. So it does show that the sulfur is what the answer was there. So.
Interesting. One thing I want you to comment on, John, is your guys down there in Orange County, right along, down there by New York City. How wet are they, and are they still wet down there?
They are wet. I talked to Dean Ford here, and they had a week ago there, and they had over 4 or 5 inches again. They were pretty wet, but things are looking pretty good in his farm there. They're doing pretty good there.
They were significantly wet last fall too, isn't that true, John?
Well, the vegetable farm really hurting there in the black dirt area there. That's where they're really hurting there. It's a lot of acres there, the black dirt down there, and they were pretty wet there. And they actually harvested some of their onions. They harvested some of the onions this spring. They got last fall. It got cold and snowed, and they were covered all winter. And they harvested. I didn't know you can do that, but they told me, "Oh yeah, it snowed shut and they're frozen. They keep."
Really?
I never heard that before, but that's.
Those onions were still fit then this spring, correct?
I never knew that works that way, but that's what they were telling me. So
I'll be darned. That's pretty interesting. So what about I tried to get Vince to step out on a limb. What do you want to say about what you're seeing in the dairy business, John? I mean, Wisconsin is there's a lot of feedback on the internet that there's just been a tremendous amount of dairymen that have left the business. And then, here in the Midwest, it's that way. Is it that significant in New York or there in the East too that you're aware of?
Yeah, there's some going out all the time. There's slowly dropping off, some of them, but right now some of them are getting milk markets again. They're looking for milk, and some are switching companies, and there's actually some more demand for milk right now a little bit. So and the prices increased a little bit. They're breathing a little easier and a little happier than what they were last year this time. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'd say we're probably about the end of the hour, John. I appreciate it for pitch hitting for Stanley. That worked out real nice and gives the guys something to